Hello, Salim Omar here from the eCommerce Money Map podcast. Welcome to another epic episode. I've got a brilliant guest with us. His name is Steve Kilberg. Steve, welcome.
Salim, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, same here. Steve started his entrepreneurial journey after making a decision to take care of his aging parents. He did not want to put them in a home and he needed flexibility. Once he got a taste for freedom and some early wins, he was hooked. After a few failures along the way, he decided to start an e-commerce business based on an idea he and his wife had for dinner one night. He grew that business to 7 figures in sales, receiving the ClickFunnels 2 Club Award along the way before COVID struck a major blow to his e-commerce business. Now, while most entrepreneurs would quit after such a setback, because he moved on, he continued on and he's rebuilding his business and he's in the process of taking it to the next level again. Great, Steve. I'm so excited to have you. Let's start off with you sharing your backstory. I gave a little bit of a snippet, but kind of give us the high-level overview or whatever you want to do that gives us a glimpse into your life, to your business.
Yeah, sure. So real quick. So in my career, I've had some obviously different jobs, and an early job where right when I got out of university I was a sales representative for a company, but I worked out of my home. And that basically allowed me to kind of manage my own little business, if you will. And so I was responsible for many tasks, but I was responsible for my role of getting things done on my own very independently. And I was in my 20s. And so a lot of people would struggle with that. I tended to thrive in that environment. So that was something that kind of gave me that early taste. Now you fast forward many years later, I was in the internet space. I was working for different companies and different parts of the food chain, I'll call it, because it's such a vast industry. And I had a job separation. And as you mentioned in your introduction to me, my parents were at a point where they were aging. And so I had the freedom and the time. And I thought, well, this is my one window. If I've ever wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and now is my chance. And I really wanted to take care of my parents because, as I said, I didn't want to just put them in a home and kind of watch. I just didn't want to do that. And there's some unique reasons why I could do that. And then I started going down this path of doing different things, had some failures, and then I got into e-commerce, as you alluded. My wife and we are having dinner one night, came up with this idea. And if you'd have told me 5 years ago that we would start this from a conversation at dinner one night, we'd grow it to 7 figures and then have it kind of, I don't want to say collapse, but it was a crushing blow because of the pandemic. And now we're rebuilding it. I would have fallen off the chair laughing, but that's exactly what we're doing. And more importantly, I'm having the time of my life because not only am I rebuilding this because I know how this works, I'm also now coaching and consulting other businesses, e-commerce and SaaS businesses on how to grow and scale their business so that they can actually sell it. They can sell their asset. And that's what we were going to do. We chose not to and can't look back. But because I know what to do, we actually had it right in our hands. Now, we would not have been able to retire, but the fact that I could have taken something from an idea, grown it, and sold it is quite fascinating. And I think a lot of people think that it's not possible, but it's 100% possible.
Yeah. Wow. So, I think there's a lot what you just shared. I want to kind of learn from your experience growing a business and then having the setback you did that we can use, myself, listeners can kind of draw from. So what were like 1 or 2 or 3 things that became lessons for you where you say, yeah, an e-commerce business really needs to watch out for, or you saying to yourself and having a conversation with your wife that in our next business, we got to watch out for this. Was there anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was. So the bottom line is that if you're a small business, you're building a brand, a lot of people get hung up on thinking they're going to build the next Nike. And that's not going to happen. That's not the case here, but you're building whatever your asset is. Again, assuming you're doing e-commerce. There's a couple things I would recommend to people for a few reasons. One is start something that you have an interest in. Because time and time again, I see people chase the money going, oh, if I sell this widget, I can make all this money. Yet they have no interest in the product. And you are going to have roadblocks and challenges come at your way. That is inevitable in life. And when you have those, if you don't have an interest in the product or the widget that you're choosing to sell, then you're going to get bored and you're going to move on. And so at the end of the day, whether you're doing e-commerce or you're doing any kind of service business, whether it's SaaS or even a coaching business, you are solving a need in the marketplace and you're doing it in a unique way that provides value to the customer and that provides it at a price that they're willing to pay. And in simplistic terms, that's what business is. So now taking it back to your question is, I would tell people to pick something they have an interest in, but also to focus on building a relationship with a customer, no matter what you're selling. And you should always be thinking from day one of, what do you want to do with that asset? Is it just something to make some money on the side? That's fine. But even then, you should be thinking of trying to sell that asset because it's worth something to somebody else. It's like a piece of real estate. It is worth something to somebody that either wants to do whatever they're going to do with that. And that's where I think a lot of people are still learning that, going through that belief system that it's even possible, because I went through that. And now that I'm on the other side of helping and coaching businesses and getting across line and actually taking them to a transaction, it is a fascinating experience and it can be life-changing. It depends how you define that. Now, whether you sell a business for 100,000, 300,000, 500,000 or $1 million, that still can be a life-changing moment, because even if you sell something for 50,000 or 100,000, that's the money you're going to get that you can use to disperse in however you choose to at that point. So you should be thinking of the end in mind, pick something you have an interest in and focus on building a relationship with real people, because there's a person on the other side of the computer screen that you're selling and you're making a transaction with. And that was a big lesson that it was just a belief that I had to go through, because A, can I do this? And B, is it possible? People are going to buy my stuff, all those types of things. But yet at the end of the day, when you simplify it, anybody can do this.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So building a relationship, and how important, Steve, is it to really become clear about who we are selling to, understanding the demographics, psychographics, really becoming clear about our client avatar? How much does that play into knowing, building a relationship with someone, a meaningful relationship, and really having a conversation with them that's relevant to them?
Mm-hmm. It is the foundation of the entire business. It really, truly is in my mind. And that is a mistake that so many people make. And we made this early on in our business as well. But case in point is you have to know those, not only demographics, but you have to know those psychographics. And why is that important? Because it's important to let you leverage that skill, that data points that you have about your customer, and you can show them and demonstrate to them how you can solve their problem. Because again, people are buying something typically to solve a problem. It might be for pleasure, but you're making a transaction. So you have to understand what those wants and needs are of the person on the other side of the computer. You have to know at a very deep and intimate level. The deeper and more intimate you know that, you then can take that information and use it in your marketing and sales functions and learn what else can you do for your customer. Because once you establish that relationship, as I said a minute ago, is people are going to say, oh, well, what else do you have that could help me? Because I've got these other issues. Now, again, depends on how you get niche specific, but that's how you can then grow your asset to a point where you can actually sell this. And to give you a little bit more detail about like our business, once I understood this, like our ideal for the stuff that we sell, it's a 48-year-old female who lives outside of Houston, Texas, who is married, college educated, drives an SUV, has a child, owns a dog, has an iPhone. I mean, I can keep going on this. Now, why is it important? It allows me to talk to that customer in a way that is different and unique so I can stand out from my competition. And that's relative because the world has competition. This goes back to picking a product that you want to sell in the marketplace, because you might get into something that's hyper competitive, which we are in a hyper competitive space. But because I'm a small business owner, knowing this detail at a very intimate level, I can compete with big companies. As a matter of fact, in our business, the stuff that we sell in the fitness niche, I'll just be more specific in that regard, which is very broad. But one of our top competitors runs television advertising on primetime TV. That is something we will never, ever do. Why? Because I know how this stuff works and I know my ideal customer at a very intimate level. Now, do we sell to males? Of course we do. Do we sell to people that are older than 48 years old? Of course we do. But that is the one person I'm talking to. We get very clear on that one person. That's a mistake a lot of people make. They're like, well, I sell to everybody. Well, no, you don't. I mean, you sell to everybody. You sell to nobody. You have to identify one person that you're selling to that makes up a core function of who your product and service can solve for. And then you will get those other people who are older that live in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, depending upon what you're selling. Those things will all be relative, but you need to understand those core foundational principles. And if you do, you can make this work.
Yeah, so good. So building a relationship, you mentioned that, and then you give some examples of really understanding the client, the prospect. What's the best way? Give us a couple of examples of how do you build that relationship? How are you communicating with them?
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks. The biggest thing, this was a mistake again we made. You learn these lessons as you move along, is you have to build an email and a database of your customers, whether it's a customer who's not quite a customer yet, but you've got their email address and you're going to get their email address by providing some value, whether you provide a PDF and solving a problem to show them that this is a step in the process. I can help you with this. It's got to be something valuable, or if it's an actual customer, and you want to build up your database of information. But the biggest thing, if I have to boil it down to, is you want to build up an email list. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to spam people, and we don't want to either, right? However, that is a way that you can build a relationship with your customer. You can communicate. It is still the number one form of communication today. We all, yes, get bombarded with emails. I understand that, but it's the way you do it that you can show the people that you are providing them a valuable service. And again, as you learn things about your customers, you will find out other things that they are looking to have solved for them. And if you show them that you're a real person, a real business, all those things, they will build that trust with you, and they will then do many things for you. And that's a belief structure that I had to go through in terms of, like, not only can you do this, but will people listen to us or our business or our product? And the answer is they will. And then they will actually ask you, and they will want to be with you, because they don't want to. A lot of people will pull for the small business. They want to support the small business versus the big conglomerate corporations. And then that becomes a strategic advantage that you can use to your point, where you can continue to grow your business to a certain level. And I hope that answers your question, but it's really building a relationship as best you can. Whether it's email is the number one thing, but you can also do like a Facebook group, or there's other platforms out there you can build that relationship. And because we've got technology like Zoom and other things, a lot of people are so familiar with that now, we can have face-to-face conversations. Not real, but again, we're still on the screen. We can see that we're real people as well.
Got it. Awesome. That's great. Now, I want to dive into a couple of things. One's KPIs, key performance indicators. What KPIs? I mean, I come with a financial background in the company that eCommerce, eSenshi, the company that we help small e-commerce businesses with their accounting and taxes and KPIs and so forth. So I want to get your perspective on running an e-commerce business and now coaching and consulting others. What KPIs do most e-com businesses not know about?
It's a fascinating question that I always ask people when I'm now coaching, consulting, and mentoring them. And there are three main questions. There's many others, but there's three core ones that I always focus on. And I am absolutely floored to this day that business owners don't know these numbers. They will typically know one of the three, but they do not know all three. Because if they did know all three, they wouldn't be struggling, and they would have the ability to understand conceptually and map out in their mind how they can grow their business. And what those numbers are is, the first one is like, what is your initial transaction value? It's called your average order value when you get a new customer in the door. Now, most people will know that because they're going to be able to look in their back end, like their Shopify or whatever platform they're using. And there's many other e-commerce platforms out there that focus specifically on e-commerce, Shopify, WooCommerce, ClickFunnels. There's another one. There's a whole slew of other ones. So whatever that is, they can typically average that out, and they will have a rough idea. But even then, I found out that they don't know. The second question that they really need to know is, what does it cost you down to the penny to acquire a customer? This is a number that people have no idea, and is absolutely mind-blowing to me because it relates into their financials, right? So if they're trying to build a profitable asset, they need to know, what does it cost them to acquire a customer? Ideally, you need to know it down to the penny. Now, you can round that up to a dime, a quarter, or even $1. We did. But because I understood that this was a critical component to growing a business, and I knew down to the penny what I could spend, that is how I could compete with companies who are running primetime television ads, which we would never do. But I could compete with them. Why? Because I knew my numbers. Now, the third number that also don't know, and this is the other biggest one that businesses have no idea, which makes it I just cannot get over this, but this is what cases when I talk to business owners is, what is your lifetime value for your customers? Typically look at that in your last 6 months, your last 12 months, 18, and even 24. It depends on your business and what you're selling. But typically the last 6 to 12 months is going to give you that idea. And why is that important? Because as you build that relationship, as I said earlier, you're going to want to offer them different products and services so they come back and spend more money. Now, you won't get all of them, but you're going to get a fraction of them to come back if you provide a good product and service and build that relationship. That increases the lifetime value of that customer. So now if you have 10,000 customers, your lifetime value starts to get pulled up by those handful. It pulls everything else up. Why is that important? Well, like one of our mutual mentors, Dan Kennedy, says, he who spends the most to acquire a customer can win, but you must know what those numbers are. So for example, in my space, if I was able to acquire a lifetime value of $100, I'm just using that as a round number for the listeners, and I knew that number, and yet I can know that I can acquire a customer, let's say at $30 US. Now, if I'm selling an e-commerce product, there's a $70 margin left over. Well, there's not going to be $70 for me to actually manufacture the product and get it in the warehouse and ship it to the door. That I can tell you right now. It depends on what you're selling, but just as a rule of thumb, that's not going to cost that much. But this is, we need now to know what it costs you to acquire a customer. So that becomes a simple math. And I know when I say the word math, it scares people to death, and it's shocking. But people get scared, as you know, right? Being in the accounting space, people hate numbers. They're like, oh, I hate that. And it gives them a chill in their spine. But they need to know these things. Because if you know those three numbers, I can tell you everything about your business, and I can tell you how you can grow your business. And eventually, if you want to grow that asset and sell it, that they get a little bit more down the road is that a financial buyer coming in is going to want to know those numbers. And if you know those numbers, it shows that your business is worth more because you have those pieces of your business buttoned up. Therefore, it's worth more, because if you don't know those numbers, the buyer coming in is going to give you a lesser valuation. They're going to look at the other financials, but that's also going to be able to give you a lower offer, if you will. That's why it's so important. And yet business owners have no idea, and it is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. I mean, decision-making becomes easier when we've got the hard facts, what history has told us. And so we can make forward-looking decisions based on that.
Correct.
So true. Looking at the clock, Steve, this has been incredible. I've got a couple more questions I want to really pick your brain on. Earlier, you talked about selling a business, exiting out of it. Is it possible to sell an e-commerce business?
Oh, my Lord. The answer is a resounding yes. And right now, at the filming of this podcast we're at a turbulent time in the economy, right? There's forecasts for it to go down, all this stuff. And so a lot of people are now panicking. But I can tell you right now, there is people out there with capital that is looking to acquire e-commerce businesses. And the ones that are better run, that have good financials, that know their KPIs, that have a relationship with their email list and have a growing business, they are worth more. They will give you a higher multiple, a higher valuation for that business asset than somebody who doesn't have that. And right now, there's buyers that we have lined up looking to buy those, whether they're a small, what's called a family office, or small private equity, or even just a small buyer who has capital. They are looking to buy these assets because they're going to grow them, because they've got skill sets that typically the people that I'm dealing with don't have, or don't want to learn, or whatever those reasons are. Because if you're talking sub 5 million, that takes a certain skill set. But to have an e-commerce business that's doing 20 million, it's a different, you have to add people and staff and all those things. But to have a business doing $1 million, which is 20 million, is night and day. But that goes back to answer your question, is there's a marketplace and there's many platforms out there that you can sell these things on, or you can sell them through individual transactions or smaller advisors like myself. But the bottom line is that there's plenty of people out there looking to buy these assets, which should be exciting because it's similar to real estate. Real estate is very fixed, right? And now that's very similar to the safest investments, but an e-commerce business can be equally as safe and lucrative if you do it the right way.
Awesome. Yeah. So as we get close to wrapping this up, what's a question, Steve, I didn't ask you? I want to dip into your genius. What's that one thing, the two things that you want to make sure our listeners absolutely hear from you?
That's a great question. Thank you very much. I would tell people, and this is what I did along my journey, is that, again, as I said earlier, you want to pick something you have an interest in, because you want to, 6 months from now, you still want to be able to overcome those obstacles. But just reach out and get some help, because there's so many people out there that are looking to help people, and they're just farther down the road, right? So you're coming at this from your perspective in your business, Salim, and on the accounting side, you're helping businesses with a problem that they have in their business, something that they have to solve, right? It's the financial. It's the foundation of your business. It's the financials, right? Now, what I'm doing is helping people grow, which ties into the financials. So if they want to sell those assets, they can, but it's to reach out and get some help from somebody who has that experience that's farther down the road, that gives you that fresh set of eyes that you can't see, because we're all guilty of that, myself included. I'm so close to things, I can't see the forest for the trees. And when I have an advisor or somebody who comes in who's farther down the road and can give me those, sometimes it's that one tip, it's that one conversation, or it's that one piece of advice, or it's that one introduction. You make that, it will change your life. And I've heard this phrase from one of my mentors, and I'll pass it along here, is that small hinges can open very big doors. And man, have I experienced it numerous times in our growth pattern. And I'm sure you have as well, Salim. And I think your viewers or listeners have heard the same, have had the same thing, but maybe haven't thought about that concept, is they've had something happen in their life where there's been a small change, but it's led to a big breakthrough. And that's why getting some help from somebody can be a big benefit. And that's the one thing that I would tell people to, don't be afraid to ask for help, because people out there are looking to help. Sometimes there's some costs involved. Sometimes there's some free advice. There's a variety of things out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so interesting what you shared. I mean, if you ask or interview or question any successful entrepreneur, athlete, like if you really corner them and say, hey, what's your success due to? Yeah, sure, there's hard work and discipline and all of that, but there's going to be something, a coach, a mentor, something, even Oprah Winfrey, that they'll attribute their success to. And I think as entrepreneurs, whatever business we own, I feel like we've got to have that mindset of wanting to learn and be really in the place of humility, that we don't know it all. We've got blind spots. Like I cannot see what's here right now, but you can. You're sitting in front of me. You can. And that's kind of where the person that we're working with can help us with. Totally. That was great. Thank you for that reminder.
There's one more point on that to give you some context. Sure. France just won the World Cup, right? And they have multiple coaches on their team. They've got a nutrition coach. They've got a strength coach. They've got all those coaches. Why? Because the athletes, to perform at their highest level, need to have that outside set of perspective. And that's the same at all levels in life, and especially when you're running an e-commerce business.
Yeah, that's a timely piece of advice. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking. They can go to this URL. It's skrpmedia.com/call. They can set up a free call with me as a value add to you. I will spend 30 minutes just giving them that little bit of insight, giving them that perspective. Maybe we can see where they're stuck, and it might be that one tip that helps them kind of cross that line. So the URL they can go to again is skrpmedia, that's all one word, .com/call. And if they go there, I'm more than happy to set up a time with them and see if I can help them out. At least maybe get them unstuck. They want to talk about some things further, we can do that. But if I guarantee the call will be worth their time, because both of us will learn something. And if I can't help them, I will always point people in a direction, because I don't know everything either, but I at least know some resources that can help people out, because we all get stuck and we all need that help.
That's awesome. That's generous. Thank you. Appreciate that. Very good. And we'll have that URL in the show notes, so folks can definitely encourage you to take Steve on that generous offer. Steve, thank you so much. This was amazing. Appreciate you and appreciate the time you gave us.
Salim, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I hope your listeners found that helpful, and hopefully you have a great 2023.
Thank you. Awesome.